On today's video, we are going to answer my #1 asked question, and that is, how do I work from the RPod? Or how do I work in travel? So I did do a video on this in the teardrop, and I'll link that above, but to be honest, I don't think I really answered the question in the best way. I think I went more tactical, showing you what I did day to day, and although I'm going to show that in this video, I also think it's really important to cover off on a few other things, like thinking about how you're going to set up your life living on the road, because that very much is dependent, I think, on your job and how you need to work each day. So down below, YouTube does little chapters, so if you're only interested in certain parts, feel free to jump around, but we are going to start with structure. Now, although I think the tactical pieces and parts of working from the road are really important, structure really became the most important thing to me when I made this decision to work from the road. And now, although I do mean the structure of your day, and I'll go over how I structure mine, I really mean the structure of my life and my life on the road, from where I stay to the rig that I have. So circa 2015, Michelle totally thought she was going to be a van life girly. That was the goal and the dream that I was working towards, because I was enamored with YouTubers that would wake up different places every day. They could park anywhere if they had a 4-wheel drive. They could stealth camp, and it just seemed like this magical nomad free life. But when I started to experiment with car camping and working, so I would, leave my house Thursday after work, and then I'd work from a spot Friday and work from a spot Monday, so that I could kind of get that extended weekend. I quickly realized that moving at any point during those 4 days was actually pretty stressful for me, because I didn't know if I'd have good solar. I didn't know if I could find a good reliable cell place, and it just felt very stressful and anxious. So I quickly realized how much I liked just kind of settling into a space and then exploring by foot, or just taking the car out and exploring later. So when I took the leap into part-time nomad life last year, I think I surprised the crap out of myself with a towable. But by that point, I had realized that as amazing as traveling around every day sounded, for somebody like me with a full-time job, that I have to be able to be on the computer from 8 to 5 at a minimum. Sometimes it's 7 to 7, it kind of depends. I need good cell service, good Wi-Fi, I need stability and structure, and then quite frankly, by the end of the day, the thought of moving, packing everything up is kind of exhausting to me. I liked the idea of having this separate vehicle, so my home stayed nice and still, and then I could go out and explore that way. So I definitely surprised myself, but for me, looking at the structure of my role, where I am a corporate person, corporate girly, I need to have a very structured and very stable work environment. For me, this job allows me to do this, so I want to make sure I'm always set up to be my most productive self. Now, the teardrop, as much as I loved it, it did feel very challenging at times, because I was working outside in the elements. So there would be days that midday I was hunkered down with my grow watt station and everything in the tiny teardrop with Feeny, trying to work through a storm, and then worrying about things getting wet, or it was a freezing cold some mornings and I'm like shivering outside. Yes, I could have gotten a buddy heater, but have we not learned that I apparently like to suffer? So for me, as much as I love the teardrop, I knew for full-time life, I needed something like this where I could work inside, and I also needed something that I could leave behind so that I had more of a structured routine every day and a very stable environment. So that led me to towables and not to vans. Although someday I might try a van, but for now, this works really well for me because it gives me that structure of a home base, allows me to work, and then also I don't have a lot of that stress in the evenings, which also leads to where I tend to stay. I'm currently on a hip camp property. I love the hip camp community. I've had really good luck with them. And basically what hip camp is I am on somebody's land right now. Actually, their rental property is on the other side of the fence that way. I have water, I have Wi-Fi, I have laundry, and I can leave my camper for full days not remotely worried because I'm safe. This one actually has a fence too, which is pretty cool because it keeps the animals away. So I can sit outside and not worry about javelinas coming up on me, which is really cool. So hip camps can have a variety of amenities, and I am not a purist, y'all. I will do BLM land. I will enjoy it. I enjoyed it in the teardrop. But for me, I like the knowledge of having amenities, and I do like the bouginess sometimes of having showers and electricity and sewer. Even though I am fully solar, some days when work is rough, you just don't need to be focused on your basic necessities. So that is one of the biggest things for me, that if I was doing this again, I would start in my head a little bit differently and look at the structure. Am I an 8 to 5er? Okay, then I might need a base camp. Am I somebody who works contract hours? Well, then guess what? Van life might really work for me. Or hey, I have a significant other that doesn't work, so they can move while I work. Cool. Just looking at your structure, I think, is the number one step to working full-time on the road and what really works for you. Fiends and I love to adventure, so a towable and just situating something here really works for us. And then also having this indoor space for him. He's right behind you guys, snoozing on the bed, cozy as can be, because it's very cold out today. And by cold, I do mean it's like 43. So it is pretty cold. I know I'm an Arizona girl, but it's still pretty cold. So for me, structure of where I'm staying, how I'm living was kind of the number one thing that I needed to work through and experiment by, you know, working from Airbnbs, working from my car when I car camped. And then obviously we did the big test with the teardrop, and then we eventually settled on a 20-foot travel trailer. Now let's talk structure of your actual day-to-day, as I think this is also really important and really dependent, again, on your role. So I'm a director of project management, and I manage a lot of our large-scale projects. I am on a computer in front of a camera most of the day. And for me to feel most productive, I personally need to have a lot of structure. So our day starts the same way every day. I get up, I make my coffee. This time of year is a little different, I guess I should say that, because it's very dark. So my morning routine's a little bit more in-camper centric right now, and eventually we'll go outside, but again, structure is what we're talking about. Make my cup of coffee. I do my 10 pages of a personal development book, my devotional, my Duolingo, because I am working on my Spanish. I get ready for the day. Once it's somewhat light out, we make sure Fiends gets his walk. I'm in an amazing area right now that has a lot of BLM land, so I can just unclip Fiends and he can run. That takes us about an hour. I make sure he gets a lot of activity. Then I come back, I make his breakfast, make my breakfast. No, I do eat. And then this is literally where I am most of the day. So what I really like about this space is I have good overhead light if I need to turn it on, say it's a cloudy day, so I can be on in front of the camera. But I try to structure being at a desk, being at a specific spot all day long so that I have that regular work hour structure. Now, I get it. I work remote and I have some flexibility, but personally for me, you give me too much flexibility and I just lose all productivity. So for me, I like the structure. Come lunchtime, I make a good lunch. It's easy when your kitchen is literally right here. And then I'm back to work. I will take Fiends on a afternoon walk and get his legs stretched, and then come right back to work. Have a nice wind down evening. Some evenings we take an adventure and we go to more BLM land. We just pick a new cattle guard to go in and we explore, and I get Feeney's energy. Sometimes we go on a hike, sometimes we just go on a sunset drive. So it really kind of depends, again, on how long the day runs, and you know what I'm feeling. But I have that ability because I can just leave my rig here to just go off into the sunset, literally into the sunset, and have a great evening of adventure. I can meet up with people, my home's safe, and I just leave, and when I come back, everything's still set up. I don't have to worry about it. So for me, structure of my day is also really important. I personally think I would struggle being a full-time YouTuber. I'm one of those people, like I'm best when I'm busy. Like I'm on it, more productive when I'm busy. So again, it's just something you need to know about yourself and about your job. But for me, day-to-day structure really matters. Let's get into the tactical side of working from the road. And we're going to start first of all with your employer. So something that there's a hair. Something that I recommend is letting your employer know what you're going to do. So I've been with my company for 6 years. I built a good, solid working relationship. My entire company is remote. We don't even have an office, so I don't have any risk of being called back in, which is worth its weight in gold. But my boss also knows what I am doing. So one, I can't lie. I'm just not one of those people. But two, I'm a YouTuber and Instagrammer, and she follows me. Hi. So can't really, pretend I'm working from a house. But two, there's also some tactical things. Not all companies are okay with you taking their equipment, their laptops, on the road. It is harder wear and tear on them, although I am very careful and cautious with this. It's just harder on them. But I have the kind of relationship with my company where, like, if I did something dumb and broke this because I was on the road, I would buy the new one. I would just be cool like that because it is harder. I didn't have heat for 2 weeks and it got to 38 degrees in here. Laptops don't like that. I was smart. I wrapped both of my laptops in Reflectix and put them in warm places so they were good. But again, just be smart, be open, talk to your company about it. If they're not okay with you taking your laptop, ask them if you could purchase a laptop and VPN onto their servers if you have servers, things like that to keep them safe. They might be open to that, but my number one advice is talk to your company about it. Two is financial implications. So in Arizona, I worked with my tax accountant to just make sure I was covered off for both me and to keep my company safe. So I do have an Arizona address and I need to be here a certain amount of time for taxes. So I took care of that so that my company's safe, and at the end of this year, they're not having to go back and like charge me taxes for different states, because that wouldn't be cool. All right, now on to just like the actual working. Y'all, it's pretty simple. I get it. I was so scared the first weekend I worked remote, but I've got some tips for you. So first of all, for me, I just like having a little lap desk. I'm working inside only because it's 43 degrees out, but I do love me some working outside. I feel like I'm so much more focused outside. But I say work in whatever manner you feel best. In the mornings when it's really cold in here, I might honestly be on the bed under a blanket just because if I'm not cold, I'm more comfortable. But this is pretty much where I sit any other time. It's nice because I have light, so I highly recommend you have some sort of light that you can get in your face if you have to be on camera. So for me, I'm on camera a lot. I just use a background. So the light helps. Here's my little tip. Darker backgrounds if you have darker lighting, lighter backgrounds if you have lighter lighting, if you have like sun in your face, helps a lot. This wall eventually is going to get decorated, but right now it makes a perfect background because like nothing sticks in front of my head. Like, you know what I'm talking about when like the virtual backgrounds disappear. You got me. But it'll be fine even with when I have stuff, because it'll be photos and it'll look decorated. I do kind of try to cover the fact that I'm in an RV with clients just because they don't need to know that. So I definitely don't want to be sitting here because you can fully tell I'm in an RV. And I definitely don't want to be, showcasing sitting outside, although plenty of my clients do that. I work for a pretty casual company. So that's pretty simple, pretty standard. Using backgrounds, making sure you're well lit are all good things to just showcase that you're not working outside. Internet. All right, so these are some things that I learned on the road that are different from when I had the drop. So when I had the drop, I was scared to death that I was going to lose internet. And I just never want this to be a thing. So I had purchased through Mobile Must-Haves a whole satellite thing router situation. Then I had my T-Mobile internet. Then I had 2 hotspots, and then I had my personal hotspot on my cell phone. It was a lot of money. and I didn't need any of it. Well, I needed some. Yeah, just hold on. The mobile must-have setup that I purchased, I got not swindled by them, but it looked sexy and it looked stable. But they didn't really know what kind of like equipment I had in the drop, and they didn't realize how much of a pain in the keister hooking up the router and the antenna would be every day. I used it this many times. 0. Because it was just too hard to set up, and my other options were much more stable. So luckily I was able to sell that. But my advice there is don't get pulled into the sexy advertising. Try some things out first. Most of what I use is my T-Mobile gateway. It actually isn't working that great right here. So I'm really thankful that this hip camp also has internet, which has just been easy. However, I do have a backup. So now what I have is a Starlink Mini, and the reason I went with a Mini is because it only takes about 25 watts per hour or less, where the larger one takes a lot more power. So I do have a Starlink Mini, and I like that because it's $165 a month, but you only pay when you're using it. So you can turn it off and on. So right now my Starlink Mini is off because I have the hip camp internet. Now, I do have my T-Mobile plugged in. I just think I'm on the edge of service, so it's dropping kind of in and out, but that actually works pretty well. I stay on my T-Mobile most of the time, and then if it just has a brain fart, the computer just flips over to the hip camps. So it works really well. So that's another reason why I do like hip camps, because a lot of them do have internet usage for you. I even stayed at one that had a Starlink if I wanted to use it, which is awesome. Sorry if you guys just heard my stomach growl. It's almost lunchtime. The other thing I have is just my cell phone hotspot. So for me, I pared it way down to just 3 things. And the cell phone hotspot is purely just because it's part of my plan and it's on there, not because I went out and purchased it extra. So I have my T-Mobile and I have my Starlink, which should cover me pretty much everywhere I go. And here's the kicker. If something isn't covered where you're at, you can go to an AT&T store, you can go to a Verizon store and get a hotspot locally. You don't have to have it all with you and be paying for it all the time. I paid for hundreds of dollars of internet that I did not use. So learn from me, people. Learn from me. East Coast is different than the West Coast. West Coast is much more accessible to T-Mobile. So just keep that in mind. If you're moving across, you might need to switch carriers as you move across the United States. I believe the East Coast is more Verizon. Don't quote me on that, but I think. So that is all I have for internet. So now let's talk about power. All right, so I am very, very blessed, and I do have a full solar system. And I think it is really important that you know your power usage for your personal work equipment so that you're not living a stressed little life. I just totally blanked in what I was going to say. Oh, my Dell laptop takes 65 watts per hour to run. That's a lot without meetings. Meetings, if everybody has their camera on, y'all, it's like 85 watts. It's ridiculous. And even with a brand new battery in this thing, I get maybe an hour unplugged, and then it takes about 2 hours to recharge. So this guy, a little bit of a power hog. So with that said, in the drop or when I was working from the car, I would end up having multiple portable generators. One, I just had kind of collected them over the years. GrowWatt was a partner of mine for a little while, so I had the ability to have a lot. I think now if I were doing it all over again, I might just get a little generator and recharge everything, or just get one big portable power station with a like 200 to 400 watt panel, just to not have all of the things, because I'm one of those like collectors. So if you're new to this, just go with the big one first, but pay attention to how much power you need. Recharging this is obnoxious. My MacBook can last like 2 weeks on a charge, not kidding you, even editing videos. And then it takes like 25 minutes to charge. So very different power usages. So how you can test that is on the front. Let me do a little show and tell. I only have this down here because I'm on full solar now. Because I wanted to dry my hair, and this can hold the full hair dryer. So this is dead, so I don't know how much it's going to tell you. But on the front of this screen, you can usually, when you plug something in, you can see the watts that it takes. And that's a good way to kind of figure out what you need. So this is a 500. This would last me without recharging maybe 2 days. Again, power hog. So I do have solar panels for this, but I would say 500 is going to be the smallest you're going to get. I would go 1200 or higher just to get you covered, you know, so that you can recharge. And also just remember, it's kind of annoying to recharge these while you need them. So like here, I would have to like haul it out the window or through the door. So just think about those things. Another reason why I often like staying at campgrounds or hip camps with power, because sometimes it's just nice to not worry about, is your solar panel facing the exact way that it should be, or obsessively checking your input to make sure your battery is recharged. So just things to think about, especially if you're a person that like needs to be very focused at work. Focusing on those kinds of things is a little bit challenging. So for power, honestly, it's really going to depend on your rig, on what you're doing, on what you like, but you can easily figure out your power needs by doing something like that, or you can Google it and kind of figure it out. Or chat GPT it. I love chat GPT. It'll kind of, if you put in like, I have this and I'm on meetings with Zoom a lot and then I need to recharge this, I'll kind of tell you how much, and then you can kind of search around from there for your best option. I like to have multiple options, backups, who your backups. So even though I'm full solar, I have a portable generator with me still. I actually have my 1200. This 500 is going back in storage. So I have my 1200 that'll stay with me. And then I also do have a portable generator that can recharge my house batteries if I need to. Because personally, again, this job lets me live my dream. So I want to make sure this is never a problem for my job. And that's kind of number one for me, is just making sure, like I joke with my boss that if I ever don't have internet, it's because there's no internet available. Which did happen in Silverton. The tower went out, the cell tower. T-Mobile is cell-based. My hotspot is cell-based. I didn't have the Starlink at that time. So I got really lucky, and the hip camp I was staying at had fiber, and they allowed me to work from their garage and just use their fiber. So I got really lucky. So otherwise, I probably would have been driving an hour into Ouray or into Montrose to find some way to work for that week, because it was out for 7 days. That's how small Silverton is, man. So just know where you're at, know what you're doing, and sometimes just it's a wing and a prayer. So that for me is really equipment. I don't do anything fancy. It's a lot simpler than you think. For me, I live alone. It's just fiends. I don't need headphones or anything like that because the noise blockers are so good. But I do have aftershocks, and I really like those because if I'm working outside, they sit like right here and you can still hear around you. So I can hear fiends. I can hear if somebody's walking through camp or whatever. But then I can hear the meetings really well. However, I have actually been told that I sound better without any headphones, no matter what kind I use. So some laptops are very different. Test it before you leave home. Just test it before you leave home. I've worked in some really funny situations and some really loud situations, and nobody really had a problem. Where my old house was, it legit, we had the flyovers from Luke Air Force Base, and there would be times people couldn't hear me. So it happens at home too. But I would just say test it before you leave. And if you're working in a really small space like this with 2 people, somebody's gonna have to take meetings outside because there's no or on the toilet. because there's really no place to hide. Even with headphones on, like you would hear each other speaking and that would drive me bonkers. But since it's just me and my supervisor Fiends, we're good to go. So that for me is equipment. It's easy peasy, nothing fancy. It's way more simple than I ever thought it would be. You just need to practice and you just need to keep it simple and keep it appropriately based, and don't panic and spend way too much money on things you don't need like I did. Learn my lesson, people. Learn it. I'm trying to save you. So I think our final thing to cover off in this video that I get asked a lot is, how do I balance then working full-time and adventure? And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but some of it is pure structure. I make sure I have a little mini adventure in the morning, and especially with Feeny. Like, Fiends is a high active, like high energy, really active dog. Y'all, I get a minimum of 10,000 steps a day with him. So I'm making sure I'm constantly making room for exercise and activity, which is an adventure, because think about it this way. I'm staying in a brand new neighborhood. Yeah, I'm on the edge of a little neighborhood, which isn't the most sexy of places, but I get to explore new areas of Arizona that I've never seen, y'all. Like, if you watched last weekend's video of Stanton Ghost Town, that's 8 minutes from me. And that's a new place for me to explore. That's an adventure. So there's this Instagram, social media sexiness that sometimes I think overshadows the sexiness of the simplicity. For me, I love finding places like I'm at and exploring new neighborhoods and exploring new necks of the world. But yeah, it might not always be the sexiest thing, because I have to prioritize a safe, reliable place to park over maybe the sexiness of a piece of BLM land sometimes. Although, don't get me wrong, you can be very productive on BLM land, and we'll get to why BLM land is kind of a third for me at this point, but it has nothing to do with working. I could be very productive there. So, see, I'm seeing birds and bunnies and cats out my window, which is an adventure, y'all. And I think for me, being okay with some days, like last night, it rained, so we took a mini walk between the rain and then we cuddled and cozied in the camper. And then today it's beautiful and sunny out, so we're gonna go on a mini adventure tonight, and I'm excited for it. And keeping the structure of my work day of being 8 to 5 and keeping, you know, my regular productivity tools, just like I would working from an office or working from home, means that I'm incredibly productive during the day, and means I can go and have those adventures at night. And again, not having to move on the weekends means I can leave this and we can go adventure and find new places to explore and really branch out from where we're at. And with Silverton, I stayed on a hip camp. I was able to leave for 2 nights. I just packed everything down, and then I went and we had adventures way outside of the realm of where we normally would have traveled if I was car camping or something like that, because the camper was safe. So balancing it for me is all about just kind of keeping my day-to-day structure, and then just making sure I make time for those adventures, and also finding the sexy and the peace and the calmness in just simple adventures. Like, there is nothing more special to me than being able to clip Feeny's leash off and let him run in the evening just through the vast desert. You know, my biggest dream is to own a piece of land like that someday, where I can just open the door with a fancy beverage in my cup and just strut to the grounds, singing and dancing with my dog. So I get to recreate that every night if I want here, and that is beautiful and peaceful. And then I can also go park in other places and other areas in other states and explore. And so it's just, again, it's just finding the structure that works for you and works for your career, and keeping that structure so that you have the bandwidth to go out and explore. And trust me, not worrying about your basic necessities means you can go out and explore. So that's why I like the hip camps. That's why I like the campgrounds. And that's why I like having a mix of those, so that I can be a little more freed up mentally after a hard day of work to just go explore and adventure. And that brings me to my very final piece of how do I find places. So I've mentioned the website HipCamp several times. That tends to be my go-to. Just read the reviews, talk to the owners, message them. I've only had one bad experience so far, but it happens. So, I mean, you can have bad experiences anywhere, and it ended up working out in my favor. So read the reviews. Stupid phone. So that brings me to just my final piece of advice is where I find the places that I like to stay. So I've mentioned the website HipCamp several times. I absolutely adore that website. I've only had one bad experience, and that was kind of my fault for not reading the reviews and having a conversation with the owner. Ever since that, I've just kind of learned to message the owner, chit chat, tell him what my needs are. I personally like to stay for about a month, 3 weeks to a month, because that enables me to really have that good balance of work and adventure. You know, if work gets crazy, I still have time to really experience the place I am. But sometimes you can't stay that long. So 2 weeks is a good, a good stay for me. I also use the website Campendium for BLM land. There's a lot of them like that. Or just get in the truck and go explore. And then state parks, state campgrounds, KOA websites. KOAs are great for newbies. Let me tell you that. It's a nice, safe place to test. So KOA, which is like a Campground of America. So they're all over the place. There's memberships you can get to Thousand Oaks. You can do Harvest Hosts. Those are like little overnight stays if you're just wanting to test things out. So there's lots of different websites. I tend to use HipCamp the most. When I'm in Arizona, I use the Maricopa County website for reservations to our state parks. You can find those things everywhere. And I'm going to give you my sneaky little trick. Use ChatGPT. So if you aren't aware, ChatGPT is an AI tool. You can get it for free. I'm not affiliated at all. Chatty Girl is just my favorite thing. And you can literally say, I'm going to be in Moab, Utah. This is what I like to do. I like to find some place to stay. I like to stay. This is my budget. I want mini adventures during the week. I want big adventures on the weekend. Give me an itinerary. And it will. And then that really cuts down on your research and your discomfort level because you know you have something that works. I've tested it with places I know really well, and I've also tested it with some places that I'm planning to go and then sent it to people who live there, and they're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I would have told you to do. And believe it or not, it knows HipCamp, it knows Airbnbs, and it knows BLM land and state parks. So you can ask for different options and small long stay campgrounds, which tends to be what I look for. So that's kind of my little tip if you're new to starting out and want to find a place that would work for your specific structure, your specific rig, your specific lifestyle. So there you go, y'all. I hope this video answered that a little bit better. I feel like I gave you a lot of information. This is a little bit different than my normal videos, but I know how hard it was when I first took the steps. So if I can give you guys any tips and tricks to get you started on your nomad adventure, I'm happy to. So if you guys have any specific questions, please drop them down below. Happy to answer them for you. I'm happy to give you feedback on tools and things that I use. And yeah, happy adventures, y'all. You guys, we will see you on the road wherever. No. I screw this up every time, y'all. We will see you on the next adventure wherever the road takes us. Fiends, I need my own tagline, like, written on the camera, kid. What the heck? I know, Supervisor Feeney is very mad.